What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Blazers Uprise Live. I am at a different location. It's a little weird, and I underestimated how long it'd take to get set up here. But, yeah, been running around. Hopefully the echo isn't too bad.
It's not, but I'm tripping right now.
Are you tripping? It's
Yeah.
a nice backdrop.
You just look a lot different.
I know, it's weird. I'm out of the cave, guys. I spread my wings today. Anyway, we're gonna hang out for a bit. We're gonna talk some new signings. Norvel Pelle? I don't know how to say his last name, Eric.
I think it's
Pelle?
just Pelle, yeah.
Oh man, I'm kind of disappointed in that. Norvel Pelle, at least it rhymes. Isaiah Miller and Jared Rhoden. I did a video on Jared Rhoden. Didn't feel like doing a video on the other two guys, to be quite honest with you, but that's what Blazers Uprise Live is for. We are going to talk about the 3 training camp signings, and then we'll take some questions from chat, and that's going to be tonight's stream. So thank you for tuning in, making us a part of your Thursday night. Anyway, Eric, what's going on, man? How was your day
My day is going pretty well. How about yours?
I played some basketball, and
nice.
that went well. I hit a clutch Dame sidestep to the right 3 at the shot clock buzzer. You would have been proud. Dame would have been proud. I was proud of myself. You know,
Good job.
I was 13 assists as well.
Unfortunately, I don't think he's in here, but if he watches this back later, happy birthday to Trevin.
Oh, happy birthday to our mod Trevin. Yeah, happy birthday to everybody. Say happy birthday to Trevin, even though he's not in here. And yeah, man, played some basketball, and that was fun.
New update for his birthday.
Yeah. Trevin says he's always in here. I don't know why Trevin's talking in the third person. That might be a software bug. But anyway, happy birthday to Trevin. I created Trevin. He's a robot. Okay, I created him 3 years ago today. So happy 3rd birthday to Trevin. Anyway, people are weirded out seeing me in better lighting, in the light. I can turn off the light for you guys if you want. If this is weirding you out, let me know. Anyway, let's just jump into the Blazer talk, man. Let's not waste any more time. Who do you want to talk about first? I did the Jared Rhoden video, so I'll kind of let you lead this stream, Eric, with this discussion about these training camp deals.
Well, before we get into like the individual specifically, I just want to go over what exactly the Blazers are doing with these training camp deals. There's a theme to it. They do not have an open roster spot, so I would be very, very, very shocked if they cut someone on the 15-man roster. I mean, it's still possible they make a trade, I guess, or dump one of them via trade. But if the roster stands with the 15 players, I don't see any of these players beating out someone enough to where they cut a guaranteed contract just to have them on the roster. So what I think is going on is the Blazers have 1 two-way spot left. The 3 players they have signed are all eligible to be two-way players. And they can have one more, so don't be surprised if they add a 4th guy to the mix here. But it's exactly what they did last year, only for a two-way spot instead of a roster spot. So we had Dennis Smith Jr., Patrick Patterson, and Marquise Chris last year, all competing, and Dennis Smith Jr., I think, pretty easily won that spot in the preseason. And I think they're just getting a group of guys at different positions and hoping that one of them plays well enough to separate himself from the other 2. And we just, sign that person to the other 2-way. And it's also possible, I guess, that we could cut Brandon Williams. I'm assuming that would take Isaiah Miller outplaying him. And then he would just take his spot too, because that doesn't count against our salary cap, so we could easily just do that. So that's the plan. It's not like Exhibit 10 deals because we don't have a G League team. It's not like we're not telling players that they have a chance of making the 15-man roster because that's very, very unlikely, like I said. So this is strictly a competition for a two-way spot. And hopefully one of these guys stands out enough to warrant giving it to him.
Yep. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't see Isaiah Miller outplaying Brandon Williams. Man, I didn't really understand that signing an undersized guard who struggles to shoot. Just it's really hard to make that work in the NBA. I mean, is there only a 6 foot guard in the NBA right now that struggles from the 3-point line? Can you think of anyone?
Someone's probably escaping me, but I'm sure they're pretty good at defense if they aren't. So which would be the only reason why you'd have a player like that on your team. But
yeah. I mean, like Gary Payton's 6'2" without shoes, but he's absolutely phenomenal defensively, and he shot 36% from three last year. He wasn't a guy, despite how good he was defensively, he wasn't a guy that could even consistently break into the league until he started shooting 36% from three. So I'm intrigued by Pelle because we need some big man depth. And then Jared Rhoden, I think, is a solid young prospect that could be a 3-and-D guy. So I like both of those signings. Isaiah Miller, I'm a little bit less intrigued by.
I thought of the answer to your question, Brandon Williams.
Oh, Brandon Williams can shoot, though. He's not...
I know, but okay. I know he has a good shot, but he hasn't shot well so far either in Summer League or the NBA last year. So
how much of that is like the types of shots he's shooting?
I don't know. I don't think his shooting was that good at Arizona either. I'll have to check.
I'm gonna look up his stats last year.
All right, I'll look up Arizona.
There's a bunch of you look up Arizona. I'll look up NBA. The thing is, I have to type NBA because I'm getting a bunch of Brandon Miller. Wait, why did I type Brandon Miller's stats? Brandon Williams. What am I on, man?
You're combining the two.
Oh, you're right. Shoot.
Yeah,
so maybe that'd be a pretty good player.
He only played 1 year of college, but he only shot 31.6% from three, the college three too. So it's not like he lit it up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a solid point. I don't know. He shot 29% last year. He just shot some difficult threes. Like, he had supreme confidence, which I don't know if that works for him. But let me look up Isaiah Miller's G League stats. Maybe it will be a competition between those guys. Maybe I shouldn't sell Isaiah Miller short.
I have all this pulled up already. So in the G League last year, Isaiah Miller shot 32.4% from three.
Okay, that's not as bad as I thought it was. I saw somewhere that was 24%. Shows the research that I've not done.
In college, he played 4 seasons at UNC, Greensboro, and he shot a whopping 24.1%.
Okay, that's where I saw the 24%. Was in college.
His highest was his sophomore year. He shot 28.2%.
I mean, did we really need to bring in a 6-foot guard who's a questionable shooter into training camp, man? Like, where are the forwards, like the 6'7", 6'8" forwards, Wenyen Gabriel type of guys? I know Wenyen Gabriel wasn't available, but like that type of guy.
Well, that's what happens and this is why I don't give them a lot of credit for Jabari Walker, but when they drafted him, I mean, it even showed on the video his agent posted about his draft experience and stuff. It showed his computer and it said, if we go to Portland, we're likely going to be a 2-way. So the Blazers were planning on having him be a 2-way most likely, and therefore they didn't go after a 2-way guy because they already had Brandon Williams, and this is before Summer League where he struggled, obviously. So they looked at it like, oh, we already have our two-way guys, and that was a misstep. I think they should have been more aggressive to sign one, and they could have always cut one of them if they needed to make Jabari Walker a 2-way eventually. But the fact that they didn't do that, and as Tyler James points out in chat, we said this at the time before the draft, it didn't seem like they were doing many workouts for guys, second round or undrafted guys. So I don't think they put a lot of scouting on those guys either, assuming they were probably going to make the 57th pick a 2-way. So I think that's where the misstep was, because at this point you're kind of looking for scraps. There's not a lot of good players like a Wenyen Gabriel type frame available. So I think you got to just take what you can get at this point.
Yeah. I get it, I guess, man. It's just Cronin has the disease that Olshey had, man. Everybody was so excited. Like, Cronin is going to get us a balanced roster. And I'm doing an offseason recap. I'm going to edit it tonight. Hopefully have it up tomorrow. If not tomorrow, it's going to be up Sunday. I'm going to the beach for a couple of days.
Yes.
So, yeah. But I already recorded it. Pretty good video, I think. I'm going to include a lot of stream clips and whatnot. But I included the quote at the deadline from Joe Cronin. And it was basically, he said he was going to... he said that he thought the roster after the offseason was going to look a lot more balanced and not be so guard heavy. And it's just funny looking back on that quote. And I included that quote in the video so people could understand why we were upset with the Gary Payton II signing. I mean, he's gone just as guard heavy as Olshey did, man. At least Olshey last year with the two-way got Trenton Watford, who's a big man with some skill that looked like a good signing. You know, Trenton Watford still has work to do to be somebody that can help a winning team, but considering he was an undrafted free agent two-way signing and still pretty young, like, it's already been a success. So I think they messed up by not signing some of the undrafted rookie free agents that were available. You could have signed them to two-ways, and you could have cut them if they didn't play well in Summer League. Like, two-ways are very flexible. There's no financial liability if you cut Brandon Williams from his two-way contract that he's currently under next year. No dead money on the cap. Two-ways don't count against your finances. So cutting somebody off a two-way is completely fine. Mm-hmm. So it's a situation where I think, not to disparage any of these guys, and Jared Rhoden is interesting, and Norvel, Pelle would give us some backup big man depth. It's just, they definitely missed the boat after the draft in potentially being able to snag another Trenton Watford, because that's what Trenton Watford was last year, man. He was signed right after the draft, and we had always complained that Neil Olshey didn't end up scooping up quality undrafted rookie free agents. And there's always some pretty much every year. The first stream me and you ever did, Eric.
Yeah.
We were begging to sign Lou Dort on a two-way contract. And then the Thunder scooped him up. Now he's like a $17 million a year player, one of the best defensive players in the league. And, offensively he's not efficient, but he's shown that he can attack the basket a little bit, and maybe playing in a better system, he would be more efficient where he didn't have to do as much. Like, that's a really high-quality player that could have been had on a two-way. Maybe the Blazers offered him a two-way and he wanted to go to OKC because that gave him a better developmental path, but there's always guys every year. And just not even trying to scoop one of them up, I thought at the time was a mistake. I was saying that in the draft stream, and now it's like,
well, we were surprised.
There's some good guys.
We were surprised that he didn't get an actual roster spot. I mean, he eventually did that season, but I think the only year Olshey really took advantage of it was the year we had Moses Brown and Jalen Horde. Which neither of those guys really panned out, I guess, especially for us. But I like that they went for two guys that actually had some potential and were part of that draft, and you had a big man with long, lanky guy who has some athleticism and stuff, and then you had a wing that has some defensive potential and could handle the ball a little bit. So I liked the direction of that. It's just perplexing how we haven't used that tool much other than that one season to try and find those guys until Trendon last year. And then with the success of Trendon, you would think you would want to mimic that in the draft this year, and we just didn't really pursue that at all. So like I said, we're left with players that haven't signed at this point, and there's not a lot of great options.
Yeah, Trevin said Lou Dort signed in OKC before they blew it up. They did blow it up that offseason, and in the playoffs that year, you should remember, Trevin, they were playing Terrence Ferguson. Where is Terrence Ferguson right now? You know what I mean? Like, they did not have great perimeter depth.
Well, was the Westbrook Paul trade and Paul George? That all happened after that. So
yeah, after. But
technically, when he signed, they still had Paul George, they still had Westbrook. So
Yeah, but they were playing Terrence Ferguson. Like, he was
yeah.
starting for them, and he's not even in the league anymore. Like, he was young back then. I mean, they did not have much in terms of depth at wing spots. They had Paul George and what else? Jeremy Grant was a 4. I mean, they had nobody to start at the 2. Nobody. It was Terrence Ferguson. So, even if they hadn't blown it up, that still was potentially a really good situation for Lou Dort going to a winning team with no depth at the 2. So, so maybe Portland, maybe Dort picked OKC over Portland, but I mean, looking back at it, man, it's. I had a feeling that guy was going to pan out just because of how good he was defensively, and he has so far. So there's been times where I've been disappointed with them not picking up undrafted rookie free agents right after the draft, and I've been right about it. And like those guys turned out really, really well. And meanwhile, who did we even have on a 2-way that year?
I think we had, I want to say that was the year we had Wade Baldwin. No, it wasn't, because that was the year before.
I think that was 2 years before. I don't know.
That was the Moses Brown, Jalen Horde one.
Yeah.
But we picked him up like later. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I would have taken Lou Dort at the time over both those guys, man. And Trent Watford was the guy I wanted last year. He's looked pretty good. So I wish they took a chance on we could have Dominic Barlow right now, or even a Kenneth Lofton who looked really good in Summer League. You could have potentially Orlando Robinson was a guy I liked. He signed with the Heat. 6'5" point guard. Alondes Williams out of Wake Forest, really good defender, really athletic. He signed a 2-way with Brooklyn. He would have made a lot more sense as a point guard on a 2-way, given his size and defensive ability and passing. I thought it would have been a better compliment than an undersized guard who can't play defense and isn't efficient.
Because Alondes can't shoot either, but if your 2 other guards can't shoot as well, but yeah. Everything I've read, Isaiah Miller is a really good defensive player, so that's probably why he was brought in. But
yeah, and Jared Rhoden is too. And Jared Rhoden kind of fills the mold of maybe a guy you could play as a small ball 4 even. I think he needs to add some strength, but he is 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan, 8'8" standing reach. So he might be big enough where you can get away playing him at the 4. Like Jared Rhoden just kind of fits that mold, I feel like, that the Blazers are going after. Just like somebody that can defend multiple positions well and play team defense on top of that, contest shots well, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and he was a solid defender, but really struggled shooting the ball. 39% overall field goal percentage, even though he scored 15.5 points a game, so real inefficient. 33.6 from the free throw or field goal 3-point line last year. But the only promising thing is he shot 80% on free throws, so I think maybe you could find a way to get him to be a better shooter. Plus, I think he's a little older. I want to say he's like 22 or something. So maybe you just have a guy who's more ready to play. But then you look at Norvel, and he's 29. But more so this is why I think we really needed a center with that other 2-way spot, and why I think it'll eventually go to him as long as he doesn't like royally suck during training camp, is because just for practice, man, we need some big bodies just to like go up against Nurkic and Eubanks in practice, and you need that. You're gonna have several times where Nurkic or Eubanks can't practice, or just they want to rest them and don't practice much, and you need someone to run the scout team or whatever, so we don't really have like a third big to do any of those duties. So I think you just need someone on the roster. It doesn't even have to play, just that can, throw his weight around in practice, be a big body, and do those kind of things.
You know what this just made me think of, man? Like, you're talking about scout teams, and normally in practice, you'll have your starters go up against a team that the coaches try and have play like the Blazers' next matchup. Mm-hmm. So it's like if they play Minnesota next game, they'll try and run some things and like recreate what the Timberwolves will do with like a Karl Anthony Towns. But the problem is you don't have a big body that can shoot to potentially play that role on a scout team. Okay, do you know where I'm going with this? Do you know the name I'm about to... Like, you sign a guy, a 29-year-old without any long-term upside whatsoever, has proven that he's just not that good. Instead, I mean, for days after the draft, there was a guy who was unsigned out of Fresno State who can shoot the three ball, handle it, decent size, decent upside. I had a early second round grade on him. That is Orlando Robinson, the guy who I mentioned earlier, signed with the Heat. Like, I think he's a more talented player, much more long-term upside, but also if you're talking about a scout team, you could have him potentially play that Karl Anthony Towns role because he can shoot and he can handle the ball a little bit. Obviously, he's not Karl Anthony Towns, and he's probably never going to be Karl Anthony Towns, but at least you have a big man with an intriguing offensive skill set that would challenge our bigs in practice, and if you're able to develop properly, could be a piece that could crack the rotation in the future. Norvel Pelle will never be in an NBA rotation unless there's injuries or unless he goes and plays for a tanking team. So that just goes back to my frustration, man. I did not plan on jumping into the stream inventing any frustrations. I wasn't thinking about things frustratingly, but as we discuss this, I'm getting more and more frustrated that we just kind of sat on our hands right after the draft. And a lot of people say it doesn't matter. It's undrafted rookie free agents, but you see teams like the Miami Heat with Max Strus and Gabe Vincent looking phenomenal and playing roles for them. Duncan Robinson, who was undrafted. Like, you know, and they've been able to extract value out of getting undrafted free agents and developing them. And I've always wanted this organization to do the same, and they've always struggled with that.
Yeah. And you would think with the people we brought in, we hired 2 assistant GMs, already had a third one on the roster already. We have a director of player strategy or whatever Asia Jones is. So you would think that the goal would be to start stockpiling some of these ways to get assets without giving up anything. And so, like, you get a Trendon Watford for nothing. You don't have to use the draft pick. Those type of players change directions of franchises, like a Lou Dort, like you mentioned already. If you hit on one of those, whether it's like at the end of the second round or in undrafted free agency, and you get a rotation player out of that, it's just such a boost to your overall like strategy as a GM. And so it's been frustrating in the past that, combined with not having a G League team, and then we don't use the assets. Trevin was asking about who our two-ways were in 2018, 2019. We literally had no one on a two-way that year. We just didn't use those things. Like, it is inexplicable why we didn't. And so it's just, I don't know. You combine that with the fact that we have like no prospects internationally as well. So that's another tool to you draft and stash. Like if we would have drafted Kamagate instead of trading the 46th pick, or Hugo Besson, or whoever was available at that time, there were still plenty of international prospects on the board. So we don't have any kind of stockpile of those that potentially could bust in a couple of years, or play well in Europe or whatever league they're playing in, Australia. So it's just such a missed opportunity, in my opinion, for years. And then, like I said, combined with not having a G League team where you're developing players, or maybe getting an extra look at 12 guys that you wouldn't normally have a close-up look and have coaching and info from all your staff on the G League team of 12 different players. So yeah, it's just it's a case where you put all that together, and I was really hoping this summer would be different. Now maybe it's just that Schmitz came along too late in the process, and it wasn't really a thing where he could influence it that much. So hopefully in the future they recognize that was a kind of a misstep this summer and work on that. And I mean, it's not, you can still build a good team. It could have no impact, even if they sign 2 undrafted free agents that were good. They still might not have played it all this year if we don't have injuries, so it might not have mattered to this particular team. It's just part of the process of finding players and how you make your name as a GM by finding those diamonds in the rough. And I just wish that in the future they could take a little bit better advantage of that.
Yeah. So me and Romp have had a debate for a while. Some of you know Romp, some of you probably don't. He's a fellow YouTuber. And he loved himself some Jeremy Sohan and thought that the Blazers should have taken him at 7. I think we have a couple people in this chat that agree with that. The reason why I like the Shaedon Sharpe pick in drafting for upside with the 7th overall pick is you can find role players anywhere. You can find undrafted role players. I mean, Lou Dort right now is a 17-point per game scorer, albeit somewhat inefficiently, and a phenomenal defensive player. If Jeremy Sohan becomes a 17-point per game scorer with like Lou Dort's defense and a forward, that's probably a good case scenario for him, right? But you're talking about Lou Dort, an undrafted rookie, free agent, versus a guy that you would have had to take with the 7th overall pick in the draft, right? You can find role players with MLE. I mean, look at Gary Payton II. It would be nice if he had Jeremy Sohan's height, and I'm not trying to sell Sohan short, but and Sohan could end up being better than both those guys for sure, but he projects more as a role player. That's where I like drafting upside, because you're not going to be able to find anyone with Shaedon Sharpe's upside as an undrafted rookie free agent. You're not going to find anyone with his upside for the mid-level exception. Mm-hmm. You're not going to sign a player young with upside that's untapped for the mid-level exception, and then they're going to fulfill it. Like, when does that ever happen? So that's why I was completely on board with drafting Shaedon Sharpe at 7. And then it's like with the 57th pick, Eric, we look like we've gotten a phenomenal role player. Mm. Like a guy who's going to be a really, really good role player in Jabari Walker. So this whole conversation, I think, shows that it does make sense to take a swing on upside in the top 10 of a draft compared to maybe going for players that project more as role players.
Yeah, the only argument would be if you think Sohan is not just a role player. So, I mean, I can see both sides of the argument because I do think Sohan has some ability to run an offense and some things that are definitely intriguing. That's more so than just a defensive specialist or whatever. But I was actually...
I mean, you're high on Jabari's like potential playmaking too, aren't you? You know, he was taking 57.
Yeah, no. So this is what I was actually researching this because I was gonna possibly do like an article or something on it, and the results were a little more mixed than I thought, like off the top of my head. But I went back through like some of the all defensive teams, and I was just curious like where they were drafted or how they were acquired. And so you look at the ones from this year, and you have Giannis, who of course is a superstar, but he was the 15th pick. He wasn't even a lottery pick. You got Mikal Bridges, who was picked 10th in that draft. Mm-hmm. Rudy Gobert was like the 27th pick in the 20 whatever draft he was in 2013, I think. They got Jaren Jackson, who was the fourth overall pick, I think. Because he was in between Luka and Trey, right? That draft. So that's the first like super high one. And then you got Marcus Smart, who what pick was Marcus Smart?
Like 7th.
Was he? I thought he was in the 7th. Teens.
No, he was like right after Julius Randle. He was pretty early.
I'm just gonna. Yeah, 6th pick. You're right. Yeah. So, and then on the second team, you got Bam, who was 14th. Draymond, 2nd rounder. Drew Holiday was late teens, I think. Matisse Thybulle was like 21 or something like that, and then Robert Williams was late 20s. Mm-hmm. So like there's not a lot of guys that are picked specifically because they're going to be a good defender and that they're like, you can acquire like a Gary Payton, like you mentioned, is a guy that was not even on a team last year at the beginning of the season, right? So
Yeah.
you can find those kind of guys at any point, and I think that's what your point was trying to be.
Yeah.
It's like you don't use assets like taking a season and getting the highest pick we'll probably have in the next few years, hopefully. I mean, it'd be great if we had the first pick somehow via trade or something next year, or any kind of top 10 pick, because that draft is loaded. But like, you, in theory, that was going to be the best asset we had draft wise for a long time. And so I don't think you could take just a defensive specialist unless you thought that guy was more of an all-around player than just a defensive specialist.
Yeah, which, like, you know, that's my opinion on Chet. He's more of an all-around player. Some of the things he can do offensively are very intriguing given his size. But I was never super high on, like, Sohan's offense. I think he has some potential, but I think he's, like, a long ways away, and who knows if he ever fulfills it. So, yeah, like, I mean, in my opinion, you just don't draft a defensive guy with some major offensive question marks in the top 10 of a draft. I mean, like, the most recent example I can think of, and it's still early, but Isaac Okoro, right? Like, and I know some people are higher on Isaac Okoro, but he was drafted with the 5th overall pick, and I hated that pick. I absolutely hated that pick. I mean, this year he was solid, like, a little under 9 points per game, 48% from the field, 35% from three. But if you go and you redraft that draft, he's not going that high. And that's with his three-point shot taking a major jump from where it was in college in his rookie year, where he was like a 20%-ish, you know, mid-20s shooter and jumping up to 35%. You still wouldn't take him top 5 in a redraft.
Yeah, I think Okoro's battled some injury. I don't know how many games he's played both season, but
yeah, but like, you're not taking him over Tyrese Halliburton or Sadiq Bey or Tyrese Maxey.
Was Avdia that draft?
Avdia was that draft, and he's actually become a really good defensive player.
That's weird, because when you looked at those picks, Avdia fell a little bit, but he was in that 5 range most of the season, like when you were just looking at prospects and where they were going to go and stuff. So, so he was thought of as like, oh, he's going to be a terrible defender, and he's basically just an offensive player. And then you have Okoro, who is the exact opposite. Like, maybe transition offense is pretty good, but not half-court offense, but like defensive specialist. And it's like someone like Avdia, who has like no real defensive skills in my mind. Like, you wouldn't think, even if you put a player like in a lab and try to develop certain skills, there's nothing you would take from Avdia that would you'd be like, oh, this guy's going to make it on defense, right? And it's all just work and determination and, like, you know, putting in the time for film study, learning tendencies, things like that. So in my mind, that shows that anyone can be a good defender, and that's why I think coaching is a lot more important than people give credit for, because you have to know what to study, and at some point, someone's got to help you teach that. So in Avdia's case, I guess you got to hope that that was Scott Brooks. But I'd much rather try to find defensive specialists. Like Matisse Thybulle could probably be had for pretty cheap right now if you needed a defensive guy, you know. So I know he's not a big defensive guy, but those guys are a little harder to get sometimes. But I mean you can find them.
MLE. Like, you can find defensive players. Jaden McDaniels was taken 28th in that draft. And I would take him over Isaac Okoro. Sure. That's the thing, is like, it's hard to be absolutely elite defensively, even if you have all the makings of a guy that could be that coming into the draft, because Isaac Okoro did. But he's not a top 10 defensive player, and it's like, when your offense is so lacking that you have to improve a ton just to become average, you're probably never going to be a really, really good offensive player, right? So that's where it's just like, it's too high for me drafting top 10 range for an Isaac Okoro, Jeremy Sohan type. And yeah, because you can find defensive guys like later in the draft. You can find them undrafted. You can find them on the free agent market. You can't find a Tyrese Maxey offensive player with all-star upside. Like, I would probably bet that he will be an all-star at some point. Tyrese Halliburton, you can't find somebody that does what he does offensively. I mean, Cole Anthony, I hate on him a lot, but I mean, he could go over Isaac Okoro as well in a redraft. So, I mean, that was a guy, that draft that I think I had him like 16th, 17th on my big board, and I was known as the Isaac Okoro hater. And he just didn't pan out.
Well, I think first of all, we're labeled as LaMelo Ball haters.
Oh, well, yeah, but we didn't like LaMelo Ball for different reasons. I just did, he couldn't hit threes in the NBL. Then he comes to the NBA and his three-point shot's completely fine. Yeah. So that was, kind of the difference there. But yeah, I mean, we definitely have some misses, but that's something that I'll always look at with like defensive specialist guys. Like I will never want to overdraft them. So that's the case with Isaac Okoro. That's the case with Jeremy Sohan. Just because, and I've said this before, as an individual player, you can have more of a positive impact on offense than you can as defense. That's why the top players in the NBA are like the best offensive players, right? Dame is the best player on the team, easily. Right? Not because of his defense. If defense and offense were even, it probably might be, I don't know, Josh Hart. Like, who knows, But they're not. So I'm drafting for the guy with the most offensive upside more often than not, and that's why I was happy with the Shane Sharp pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still argue that Sohan, I mean, we didn't get to see him in Summer League, obviously he sat out, but I think he's going to have a decent impact right away on offense. Just because of his skill set. Obviously, he has to learn how to shoot, so that's going to be a big part of the equation. I think that was the draft where we literally said every person's like weakness was they had to learn how to shoot.
Yeah.
For the until like the teens or something. But yeah, I just that's where like I completely agree with you, except for like I do think Sohan has a pretty high upside on offense.
I bet you 3 years from now, somebody clip this. We're not going to remember 3 years from now, but I bet you 3 years from now in a redraft, Sohan doesn't go top 10. Maybe that's a little too bold, but that's just what my gut feeling says.
I'm not going to go there. I think he'll be close to that, but there's I think this draft's going to be looked at as a lot of good players though. So
I mean, you just have too many people with more offensive upside below him for some of them not to leap him, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Just like the case was with Isaac Okoro, right? Like, I thought Tyrese Maxey had a lot of offensive potential, but he shot 30% from three in college, but I thought his shooting form was fine. I thought his shooting would improve. Like, I didn't buy the 30%, and I mean, that's worked out. Tyrese Halliburton, as a playmaker and scorer and just, how crafty he is, like, that's hard to teach. So I also begged for Phoenix to draft him, which they messed up and took Jalen Smith. I mean, that's another story. But I just think you have too many players with offensive upside. Like Duran was taken below him. Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara for OKC. I mean, he looked really good in Summer League. I think there's a chance that he's a top 10 player from this draft. AJ Griffin, even a Malachi Branham, man. I mean, you just have Nikola Jovic, 27 to Miami. You just have too many players with offensive upside. Shoot, Jabari Walker has a chance of being better than him.
The Spurs got Branham anyway.
Exactly. Which, that's the thing. Their draft could look fine if Branham pans out. That's why I wasn't super high on Sohan.
Man, Trevor's got me thinking in chat. Imagine if Cleveland had McDaniels. With Mobley and Jared Allen.
I mean, if you're looking for defense, right, just trade down. Like, that's the thing. Like, instead of taking a Sohan, trade down and take a Tari Eason and then take another prospect like a Jovic who fell to 27, right? Or a Blake Wesley who fell to 25, also a Spur. Like, that's the thing. You can still find a prospect later with, I mean, I think there's a decent chance Tari Eason's better than Jeremy Sohan. Like, I had those guys in the same tier. So I think I knocked Tari Eason down a little bit right before the draft, but I mean defensively, I think they're similar. So that's some draft philosophy stuff for you guys. Yeah, I had another thing I was gonna say, but this just kind of ties back to like. We're talking draft stuff because we were talking about going after undrafted players and talking about these training camp deals. That's how we got here, but go ahead.
I guarantee Minnesota would not trade McDaniels for Okoro right now.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, imagine like Halliburton and Garland. Imagine Maxey and Garland. Maxey's a little undersized for the 2, but I mean, I think you can live with being undersized at the 2 when you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen as your bigs. Mm-hmm. Like, Garland and Maxey would be electric offensively. Would already potentially be like a top 5 or 6 backcourt in the league on their rookie contracts. I mean, that's the thing. Instead of taking Okoro at 5, they should have traded down. Tried to sell a team on the idea of Isaac Okoro, or even Obi Toppin was a hot name around that point in time. So, I mean, yeah, maybe they end up with an Aaron Nesmith and a Kyra Lewis Jr. I always say Kira. Maybe they end up with those 2 guys and it looks bad, but if you draft the right guys, if you have confidence in your scouting department, you don't take a defensive guy top 10 instead of just trading down and taking 2 swings. So,
yeah, I also heard with Jaden McDaniels that Utah would have taken 2 less first if McDaniels was part of the trade instead of 4 future firsts or like some of the swaps. It would have been less, and Minnesota would rather give up the first.
You know who else is in that draft that we haven't talked about?
Who?
Desmond Bane.
Yeah. 30th pick?
Yeah, 30th pick. The second round absolutely sucks, but you had some value in the late first.
And if we would have just contacted Boston before Memphis did, because Boston did that 2 years in a row, right? Where they dumped a salary because they knew they were going to be up against the tax or whatever. So, yeah, we could have gotten the 30th pick of that draft. And, yeah.
Dude, I'm looking at the second round from 2020, the 2020 draft. It might be the worst second round ever. Like, I know it's still early, but just looking at some of these names.
I mean, there's some pretty brutal second rounds if you look back through history, but yeah.
Still bad. It starts off Tyrell Terry, Vernon Carey, Daniel Arturu. Theo Maladone has been really rough. Xavier Tillman's been okay. Tyler Bay, Vit Krejci, however you say his name, Saban Lee, Elijah Hughes at 39, we know him. Robert Woodard has sucked. Trey Jones isn't Tyus Jones. Maybe he can be. I don't know. Nick Richards, Jamias Ramsey, like CJ Ellaby. I mean, it's so bad. That's just the first half of the second round. It's garbage.
No. So what? It was basically 2 separate trades, Blevins enthusiast, because Boston and Memphis had agreed on a trade, Cantor for the 30th, Cantor and the 30th pick for basically nothing. But then the Blazers stepped in and said we'd trade Hazonia for Cantor, and then Boston left it up to Cantor which team he wanted to go to, and Memphis would obviously rather take a minimum contract in Hazonia than a $5 million contract in Cantor, but I still don't understand why they got the 30th pick out of that.
We could have gotten Cantor in the 30th pick and just like cut Hazonia.
Yeah, pretty much.
And drafted Desmond Bane.
But I believe that was the year we were just under the tax like the entire year. So
then
like
trade a couple
seconds.
I know. Figure it out. You know what I mean? Like
I know.
Yeah. Oh God. That's so gross. Like
I mean,
I think Olshey just didn't value that pick. That is maybe the most underrated, and there's not many underrated blunders of Olshey's career because people don't like him and they make that known. But that is definitely the single most underrated blunder of his career was giving up the 30th pick just to get off Hazonia, who he signed the year before, who was still only making basically a minimum. When, I mean, yeah, just the 30th pick, maybe you can trade it up to 27, 28 and take a Jaden McDaniels. Or, I mean, Desmond Bain at 30, I wasn't super high on him, but statistically coming out of TCU, he looked really, really good. I overthought him. But, you know what I mean? Like, as a professional GM, you got to do a better job than that. You don't ever give up a first-round pick, even as the last first-round pick of the first round, even as the 30th pick. You don't give that up to get off a minimum contract. That's terrible.
Well, like I said, I don't think we ever had a chance. We just got in because we wanted Cantor. But I think they had already agreed to that. But for months leading up to that draft, I was right here saying Portland needed to do something like that if it was available. I think the year before that was the TJ Warren in the 32nd pick to Indiana for nothing in return just to take on. And I think there was also then another trade there where I think that was the other Boston one where they sent something to, was it Baines to Phoenix or something? And Phoenix got the 24th pick or something like that. So yeah, it was like, there was all kind of moves like that. We had that trade exception, and we were saying Boston needed to do that, and Cantor would be the perfect thing. So that's what you got to be creative when you're a GM, man. And props to Memphis because they somehow didn't have to take Cantor's contract and still got the 30th pick.
Yeah. We'll take questions from chat for about 10 minutes, then I'm signing off. Alton Lee says, I was here on draft night. Nobody even knew who Trent Watford was. I said we got extremely lucky to get him. Well, the people who watched my underrated draft targets video knew who he was because he was a guy I covered before the draft as a potential like undrafted guy to go out and snag. So, that's why you watch my videos, so you know. I try and make it, like that's the thing is you can do your own research and look at prospects and go look up a bunch of film on them, or you listen to me and in 2 minutes I'll kind of explain the idea of their game because I've done the research for you, and then you can kind of have an idea of who these guys are on draft night. Like that's why I like putting out those videos, is because I try and make it easy on you guys to know some of these more unheralded prospects in case we get one, and you can say that you know them.
And so Aeromancer says when we traded for Hassan, we traded Mo and Myers, but then the Heat made it like part of a bigger trade and sent Mo and it was actually a first, not a second. It was a 2025 first round pick, which they used then, the Clippers used as part of the Paul George trade. But yeah, that was they gave another team a first-round pick to take Mo as part of that trade. I think it was during the moratorium, so they still had time to work it out. And I think it eventually became part of the Jimmy Butler sign and trade, and then, there was other teams involved. But,
Speaking of another elite defender who was taken basically at the end of the first round.
Yep, 30th pick, I think.
Butler, So, I mean, it was funny as we went on that whole conversation, Eric. Did we ever even say Draymond Green?
I mentioned him when I went through the defensive players, but I
just had to make sure we mentioned Draymond Green because that's kind of the poster child. The guy who knows all 35 players taken before him. Blevins Enthusiast says we should try and poach Harkless from Atlanta. He should be cheap. He's making $4 million right now. I just don't think that works for the Blazers' budget. And what are you going to, you're trading DD for him and using a TPE. The problem is then we can't duck the tax, and I think ownership wants to duck the tax again. So I don't think they're going to say, we'll be in the tax for Mo Harkless. I just don't expect anything at all at this point.
I mean, I guess you could do something like Winslow and DD. But I don't.
Harkless's shooting's just fallen off, man. And it wasn't that great to begin with, but in his 4 seasons here, The first year he shot 28%, but then after that he shot 35%, then 41.5% on 2.5 threes a game, played 77 games. And then the following year was back down to about 28%. So it was a mixed bag, but at least he had a couple good years in there. But since then, in the 3 seasons since then, he shot 35%, 27%, 31%. So it's kind of hard to say how good of a shooter he is for his career. He's a 32% shooter. That's probably right where he's at. So I don't think Justice Winslow is any worse for his career.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at that point, like, Harkless has a little bit more size, and he's been here. I think he's a better cutter, finisher, better to put up against, bigger wings and forwards. But Justice Winslow's a better passer, so it just depends on what you want, I think.
Yeah. I think the fact that we had Justice last year and he fit in well and seemed to be happy here, I think that pretty much eliminates a trade like that for someone who's not an upgrade. Now, if you're going to talk about, like, if somehow we did Winslow for Jared Vanderbilt or something like that, yeah, I think then maybe it's a different conversation just because of how good a defender he is, but I don't think that's going to be on the table, so I don't think it matters.
Yeah. Can I get a pet peeve off my chest? I don't know. Like, Winslow looked good here. We don't know if he's a good fit with A, better players than he played next to, and B, against better teams. He played 11 games for us. Part of that was that 4-game winning streak, but we played the Knicks, who are a lottery team. We played the Bucks, who didn't have Giannis. We played Memphis last game before the All-Star break. And then we came back and the first game was against the Lakers, who were also a lottery team. So it was 2 lottery teams, the Bucks without Giannis, and then Memphis right before the All-Star break. Like, it was my pet peeve at the time, like, people that would read a little bit too much into it. And I've been on record saying that in the past. It's just, I don't know, man. Like, if you have Dame and Ant and Hart on the floor with Eubanks or Nurkic and you're playing an elite team, like, I don't know if he's a good fit. I still don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm not too attached to him being on the team.
I didn't say attached. I was just saying...
I know. I'm just explaining my view on it. Because a lot of people are like, he's a really good fit. He showed he was a really good fit here. And I don't know.
Because Mo had that Norm Powell type, I don't know what to call it, not poutiness necessarily, but inconsistent motor, I guess, inconsistent show up. Remember he was like in and out of the lineup a lot. I don't remember if that was his last year here, or I think it might have been the year before that. Although Jake started a lot during that year, so I think that was the year his last year. So I think it was like, remember there was that stuff with Quick where he always, like, I don't know, they kind of danced around it, but like they got into like a beef at one point or something. And so, yeah, maybe guys like that, I don't know if they're looking for that are kind of on the tail end of their career and not really looking like they're still in their athletic prime.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he didn't like playing for Stotts, man. Who knows?
That's probably true, yeah.
Who knows? But, yeah, I mean, I'd probably just keep Winslow. I like Winslow as a person, man. Cool guy. I just wish he could shoot threes better. Like, and I'm sure he wishes he could shoot threes better, too. He'd be making more money and be playing more.
Speaking of Layman, he's available.
Dude, I just don't understand. Like, he shot so much better here than he did in Minnesota. And he's the type of guy where if he's not shooting well, he's just not good enough. And it's like, but his cutting ability is intriguing, man. I was watching back highlights to a couple games that season and just him playing and the way he moved. just really worked. Nurkic fed him like crazy, and then he could get hot from three. He didn't shoot the best that season, but he shot 33%. That cratered near the end of the year when his role was getting yanked around. And it was just like, man, if you just give this guy a consistent role where he's not like, starting half the season, then getting DNPs, then starting again, like he was all over the place. He's probably a little bit more confident mentally and maybe shooting 35-36%. And if he's doing that, then you got yourself a really good role player. But then he goes to Minnesota and his 3-point percentage just absolutely craters. He shot 23% last year in 34 games.
It's got such a high arc, it's hard to be consistent. But that year I want to say he was up closer to 40% for a while, and then once, like you said, once his role started getting messed around, he really fell off, and that's why he really wasn't much of a factor in the playoffs, other than when I think Mo got hurt or fell for one of the games that he had to come in, but against Denver. But yeah, he really didn't play much in that playoff run.
I could see him going overseas and just like being a dominant player.
Well, I mean,
man.
If Azonia is like MVP level over there,
yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just with his size and athleticism, and he can score a little bit, like I feel like he'd be a really electric player in the EuroLeague, man. So, if that's where he needs to go, hopefully he'd be happy with that. But always root for the guy. I actually met the guy. Some of you probably never knew about that, but I actually met him. It was like I don't know. It was like Uber riders won a meet and greet with him, but I didn't win I didn't win through an Uber ride. I just bought the tickets off scalpers. It was like the only time I bought tickets off scalpers outside the arena. And it was like this dude's second ticket. Like the dude got 2 tickets or something and gave one of them to a scalper. So we just like chopped it up during the game, and then after the game we got to meet Jake Layman and do like a Q&A. So it was but like Jake Layman was real chill about it. It was a little awkward because it was like some people that you could tell didn't really know much or care much about basketball, but Jake was still pretty cool about it, man. Took pictures with everybody, like just didn't even seem annoyed by it at all, man. Shoot, nice. If I was in the NBA getting some of the questions he was asked, I probably would have been like, man, what are we doing? Why am I wasting my time with this? But he was real cool about it. So ever since then, I've always liked Jake Layman personally. Only NBA player I've ever met. So, always rooting for him. It's just, I don't know if he's going to get another chance in the NBA.
Gray Hughes says he has a really high arc and is consistent. So I guess it is possible.
I mean, it's you want your arc to be 45 degrees when it hits the rim. Like 43 to 45 degrees, I believe, is the proper angle. Because it's really easy to miss long or short if you have too high of an arc. It's really hard to get the distance right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, especially, I mean, when you're in the NBA, there's obviously a lot of energy running around chasing around the best athletes in the world. So, like, the higher the arc, the more tired you are, the harder it is to, like, replicate it as well later in the game. So that's the only thing I'd say. I mean, it's easy to just go to a gym and shoot. I'm sure if we took Jake Layman to a Blazers Uprise basketball meetup, he would hit like 100 threes in a row and just look awesome. But it's a little different when you're playing in the NBA and having to do expend that much energy.
Yeah, which could explain why his 3-point percentage maybe cratered a little bit late in the season in Portland as well. So, anyway, Gray's flexing his 3-point shooting ability, man. Nice. If I did that, there would be people on Reddit that would have something to say. But anyway, anything else for the stream? This chair is like making my back sore. And you're yawning.
It's late, man.
11:26.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's possible to have a good shot with high arch. It's just,
never been one for high arch.
Was looking for a last second question, but
Yeah.
Todd Murray says sharpest for real just needs time against grown men. Work out Dame and they would get his mind and body right. His hops is ridiculous. Can't teach that. Yeah, I mean,
I'll be preaching patience all year with them.
hopefully that's the case. That man, it was such a bummer when he got hurt because he had just hit that ridiculous turnaround fadeaway shot from the baseline, like an 18-foot jumper. And those kind of shots, I mean, it could have just been a lucky shot that one time, but like those kind of, if you have that kind of shot in your arsenal for like an actual game and not just like goofing around, like those type of players can be like star level scorers in the NBA. So just that one shot was like, oh man, that guy does have that in his arsenal. If that's like a consistent thing that he can do, as I mean, because you can't stop that kind of shot, and that's one of the kind of shots that like Kobe and MJ score on that like you can't guard basically. So yeah, if he can develop that and that's his true version of himself and not just a lucky shot, the sky's the limit there.
The three biggest question marks with him are, can he, like, I have confidence in his mid-range game, but I'm not 100% sure if he can be consistently good from three yet. Like, that's something he's just going to have to show.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily down on that, but he has to prove that he can be a consistent shooter from three, including some of the, pull-up three-point stuff he likes to do that he's shown the ability to make at lower levels. Okay, so three-point shot. The second thing is, will he have the ball handling / burst to be a slasher? Like, will he be able to beat guys off the dribble?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, will he be able to make the right play or right pass if he does that? Okay, so that's the second thing where, like, first, I don't think his first step is necessarily the quickest. But that's something you can train. And, I mean, you've seen Anthony Simons, I think, develop his first step, and his first step is quicker than he came into the league. So I think that'll come with time. And then the third thing, obviously, is defense. It's like if he can be a good enough three-point shooter and be able to pull up from three and then, like, be able to handle the ball better and, maybe get a little bit quicker off the dribble so that he can attack the rim and use his athleticism. And then if he's playing solid defense, then you're looking at probably a star. So those are the question marks for me, because I think his finishing ability will be fine. I think his mid-range shot will be fine as long as he doesn't force things.
Rahi asked, how many minutes do you think he'll get preseason? I think as long as he's healthy, he'll play 25 minutes or so. Yeah, I think I'll play a decent amount, because what happens is, I mean, last year didn't we sit Dame almost the entire preseason? I think he might have played like one quarter of a game or something. If I don't.
Yeah, I think
remember.
Dame might play a little bit more now just because he sat for so long.
Yeah, but they really didn't work most of their starters much in preseason, so. I think a lot of the rest of the guys will play.
That's intriguing, actually. We'll end on this. Like, their starting lineup was exactly the same as it was the year before, like after the trade deadline. So the starting lineup had already played some legitimate time together.
Mm-hmm.
This starting lineup hasn't. Like, Dame's played with Ant before, but like in the starting lineup with Nurkic, how much has Dame played with Ant? You know what I mean? Especially this version of Ant, who's different than the version of Ant that Dame... we haven't seen this version of Ant plus healthy Dame, okay? And then you have Jeremy Grant that you're tossing in there, and then you have a battle for the starting three spot where, that's up in the air, where a starting spot wasn't up in the air last year. So I think you might see a little bit more run for some of the regulars, but, it's not going to be anything like what it will be in the regular season for sure.
Right. And yeah, I mean, you could learn a lot of that stuff just runs in practice, but with only 4 preseason games, I don't know how much they'll do that. And I don't know how much they'll give to these 3 training camp deals to wrap up the stream back to the beginning. If it's a case where they're trying to see them in game action, they might play them a lot like they did with the 3 guys last year.
Yep. Agreed. Anyway,
that's going to... This love chat bot keeps...
Oh, well, let me think the Grey Hughes investigates With the $10 dono, he says, thanks for the shows, and yes, I really could shoot the threes, but I am 57 now and haven't played in 24 years or so. LOL. I believe you. I've just not... personally, I haven't been somebody who tries to shoot with a high arc. It just doesn't really work for me. It works for some people. I see it myself, so I trust you on that. But yeah, you're definitely into basketball retirement there if you haven't played in 24 years. Appreciate the $10 dono from Gray Hughes.
Gray, man, I have a challenge for you. Sometime before the end of 2022, go shoot some baskets and just let it fly a little bit. It's always a good feeling to shoot some jumpers, right?
Yep. Shoot or shoot, baby. So yeah, that's it.
Real quick, Stuttering Ducky asks, would the first preseason game, a lot of fun bench players, or first maybe regular season game be more fun to go to? 100% regular season, not even close in my mind.
Absolutely, yeah. Better atmosphere. Like the atmosphere is something to experience for a big game, so definitely try and make it to a competitive game, or maybe when the Blazers are like on a winning streak or playing well. That's when the crowd's most into it, and that's a fun part of the experiences, the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, anything else, Eric?
Thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been a fun stream, and appreciate all of you for joining us. And Tori, good luck with Valkyrie.
With what?
I'm not going to repeat it.
Yeah, dude, that's like playing LeBron one-on-one. I know I'm gonna lose, but I'm gonna try to win, you know? Yeah. Anyway, shooters shoot. I hope all of you have a good rest of your night. What were you about to say?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Good night, kids.
I'm just not gonna let you. I'm not gonna let you talk again. We're out of here. We're out of here before Eric embarrasses me too much.
My two youngest are at my mom's house right now, so I was just
are they?
Yeah.
Oh, got you. Well, we'll be live again on Monday. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to get out this off-season recap by Friday, so I keep pushing stuff back. But that's fine. We have time. Like, I was only planning on uploading 4 things in August anyway, so it's like if I push some stuff back, I'm not really tripping about it. So, Sunday there will be a video. Just don't know what video. So should be one video between now and Monday, and then we'll stream again. And I don't know what I have scheduled for Monday. Let me see if I have anything scheduled for Monday.
Have fun at the beach.
Yeah, I will. I'm gonna try not to get sunburnt because I burn so easily. So we have nothing planned for Monday. We'll figure something out. But yeah, we'll be live again. A little bit earlier next time. I'm not going to be 10:15 or 10:20 again. So hopefully you guys have a good rest of your night. Eric, you have a good rest of your night.
You as well, Tori.
And I'm out of here. We're out of here. We'll catch you Monday. Until then, as always, peace out. Go.